So I would like to call this meeting of the Union Pier Stakeholder Advisory Committee to order, noting that the meeting notice has been posted and the press notified as required by the Freedom of Information Act. Joining us today are our committee members, Marvetta Daniels, Vince DeMauro, Jerry Shower, Brian Turner, Faith Rivers Daniels, Rick Giroux, Barbara Melvin, and Ray Huff. Sorry. Ray Huff. Joining us virtually are Josh Dix and Edward McKelvey. Not committee members not with us this evening are Brian Derberry, Winslow Hasty, and Laquita Bryant Jenkins, as well as Doug Warner. However, as proxies, we have Sunday Limpicus, Cashin Drolet, and Scott Barkley. You have previously been provided with copies of the minutes from the last committee meeting, which occurred on October 11th, 2023. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Second.
Okay, so Rick Giroux moved and Vince second. The motion to approve the minutes has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? There being no further discussion, we will now vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is adopted. Now we will proceed to today's agenda.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm going to call up Bob O'Neill. Thank you. There seems to be, if anyone's missing a phone, we have it up here. Leave it out for somebody else. Oh, someone
That would be great. One moment. Go ahead.
There we go. Bob O'Neill is going to go over the committee chart.
Good evening, everyone.
Evening, Bob.
Yes, okay. At each meeting, we're gonna go review the charge, just to make sure everybody's so comfortable with what the roles and responsibilities are. So I'm not gonna read them all. You've seen them a couple of times, so please review them. We now have people who are going to work with us in their various roles. So I think it's important that they see those ground rules because it's the way we're going to engage over the course of the project. So any changes, comments, questions? Hearing none, they will stand.
Next, we're getting an update on the Peninsula planning process by Chloe Stuber with the City of Charleston Planning Department.
Good evening, everyone. Where do I stand? So I'm not,
Anyway.
how's this? Is this good? Okay, so I am a senior planner with the City of Charleston in our planning division. I'm the project manager for our Peninsula plan, and I'll also be managing the portion of that Peninsula plan effort, which is to focus on waterfront land use planning. So we're looking at how do we inform land use along the waterfront and the peninsula, and I'll be going into that in more detail. So in this planning effort, the guiding questions are, how can we enhance our relationship with water on the peninsula? And what priorities and values should guide future redevelopment along the waterfront? So one of the things that we've already been hearing in these peninsula-wide conversations are a lot of people's experience with water on the peninsula is negative with flooding, interacting with flooding on a daily basis. And though we are surrounded by water, we have few real public access points. So this is one of the things that we'll be focusing on. And another is when we do have an opportunity to redevelop portions of the waterfront, what priorities and values should guide that redevelopment? So these two questions are going to guide ultimately the recommendations that end up both in the Peninsula plan and also in a potential new future land use district in our comprehensive plan. And the name for that future land use district is going to be waterfront redevelopment. On the right hand here, you'll see the study area for this effort. So though this will relate to Union Pier and Union Pier is within the study area, we are looking at the entire peninsula. Something that's very important when looking at this map is the study area is not the same thing as what will ultimately be included in the future land use district. We don't know yet which portions of the waterfront will be assigned that new designation. That is part of this effort, is one, to determine what are the recommendations for this land use district and where is it appropriate to apply them. So again, what is a future land use district? These districts are recommendations. This is an example here on the bottom left of one of our future land use districts, the city centers. This is a few sentences long. So that is a future land use district, and that encompasses the recommendations that are part of those. These are high level, and they can apply in various contexts. And they can address, they don't always address all of these things, but they can address obviously uses. So residential, commercial, what intensity of residential, commercial, it can address affordability with a residential, the density, heights, how public and open space is incorporated or prioritized, water access being part of that, and how we approach stormwater management. So these are all things that can be and have been addressed in some of our other land use districts. What a future land use district is not a change to zoning. So whatever ultimately becomes the future land use district for waterfront redevelopment is not going to change any existing zoning. It will inform future changes to zoning, and it should guide future changes to zoning, but it does not change it outright. And then the other thing that future land use district is not detailed design recommendations. So in the study that we're doing and in the recommendations that come out of it is we're not looking at detailed designs for specific sites. We will not be getting to that level of detail. Just emphasize the high level nature of this work. To kick off this portion of the Peninsula Plan that's really focused on this larger study area along the waterfront and the land use recommendations, we will be holding 2 community open houses in December. The first, December 11th, that'll be an evening open house. The second will be a morning open house on Wednesday, December 13th. These are both going to be the same format and the same content. We're having 2 to accommodate different schedules. And these will both be held at the International Longshoremen's Association, the ILA, building on Morrison Drive. And for those who are interested in attending these, this will be an opportunity to engage one-on-one with consultants. So the open house format will allow both an opportunity to hear formal presentations, so get that information, but also go around and actually talk one-on-one with the people who are going to be working on this planning efforts, as well as staff. So this is a great way to meet and engage with the planning team. For updates on this and other Peninsula Plan efforts and really all planning efforts that the city is spearheading, we have a monthly newsletter. This launched this fall, so we only have a few issues out, but this is a newsletter that creates a digest, sort of an easy digest of all things planning going on in the city to make it easy to keep track, because we understand there's a lot going on. So we're trying to make that easier for folks. So I highly suggest signing up for that newsletter. That's the best way to stay up to date with this and other planning efforts. And then also the Peninsula Planning website is where we will have all the information on these events and other events related to the waterfront land use planning. And this email here will come to my inbox as well as planning manager's inbox. So peninsula@charleston-sc.gov is the best contact for us. Are there any questions? Yes.
How do you respond to the question of why the study area is confined to the peninsula?
That is a great question. And I think that, or at least what led us to that decision was the unique context of the peninsula. And it will be hard to apply these types of land use recommendations to all parts of the city. because the way that we're addressing the waterfront on the peninsula is going to be so different from other parts of the city. We already essentially have a waterfront district for other parts of the city, and that's low impact conserved. These are areas that are going to experience marsh migration in a different way than the peninsula, because the peninsula is already developed so much next to the edge.
Thank you.
Chloe,
Yes.
could you go back to the map that showed where those areas are and just kind of list out for us the neighborhoods that are affected? Or that you're considering?
Yes, so I would say all neighborhoods would be my immediate response. So I think part of this is the waterfront is for everyone. We want everyone to have an opportunity to enjoy it. So it impacts everyone, and all neighborhoods should be listening in and participating in these conversations. But specifically, in terms of the neighborhoods adjacent to the study area, we have the historic neighborhoods in the neck portion of the peninsula. That's Rosemont, Silver Hill, 4 Mile, Hibernian Heights, as well as Bridgeview, Garden Hill, and Kiowa Homes, say, are the closest in that portion. East Central, East Side, Meeting Street, Manor, Cooper River Courts, going down thing. All of the sort of this area here is already very involved in looped in with Union Pier, and I'm not going to embarrass myself and try and list off all of the neighborhoods that are here. And then over here we get into obviously the western portions of the peninsula, Harleston Village, West Side, Gadsden Green, and you'll notice that there's a big opening here. The two big openings that we didn't even include in the study were because though we can learn from them, we're not going to see much shifting, and that is along the Battery, Magnolia Cemetery, and Wagner Terrace in the Citadel. So though they will be impacted and they should be involved, these are not necessarily portions of the waterfront that we're going to be studying for different land use designations than they already have.
Oh, I have a question.
Yes.
Are there areas of prioritization within the study plan?
No.
No.
We are, we tried to cast a wide net to really look at this holistically. I think, one thing that I think is going to come out of this is the northern part of the peninsula is such a different context than the southern part. Then, how do we handle that? Can we handle that within one land use designation? Probably not. But so we're really trying to understand what the context is currently, and what the community would like to see in the future, and try and capture that in this district. Yes.
So you said that no zoning changes would be coming out of this, but will any recommendations for zoning changes come out of this?
Absolutely, yes. That is ultimately the function of a land use recommendation, is to inform, recommend for changes to zoning, as well as any other, things that levers or tools that we have at our disposal, zoning being the primary one.
Okay.
And we are in the middle of, or at the beginning, beginning of a zoning rewrite. And so absolutely all recommendations coming from this effort, as well as the broader peninsula plan, will be informing any specifics addressed in the zoning rewrite that could implement those recommendations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just noticed that on your high level items, there was nothing about transportation, cars and bicycles and pedestrians, and I wondered if that is that included somewhere else.
That is a great question. So typically for land use, it doesn't get into that level of specific recommendations for transportation. Although I will say, we'll make connections to in areas of transit, for example, like how does the land use connect to the transportation infrastructure around it? So there is that in there. And I will say that the Peninsula Plan is addressing that. One of the focus areas for the Peninsula Plan is mobility. So we'll be looking at that very detailed level for the entire peninsula.
Thank you, Glenn.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we're really excited to introduce you all to the fabulous team of folks who we are contracting with to do the work on Union Pier over the next several months. And I want to start, I know hopefully most of you saw the announcement that went out. I know the advisory committee, I want to congratulate you all on all the hard work you did in making this decision. And I think when you hear from them tonight, you'll be very excited. I want to start by introducing one of the principals who you'll hear from in a little while. And we've hired the ASICO group that I owe an apology to for spelling their name wrong on the agenda, which I've spent hundreds of times spelling their name right. So I apologize. But Fatika Robinson, who will be coming up a little while to talk about the engagement plan, is here. And she will be working with the Riley and her team, who you'll get to meet later, to co-create and to execute a very inclusive engagement strategy over the next several months. And then we have a group of planners through Sasaki, and I'm going to let them introduce their team, but I want to introduce our three principals. And the first is Fred Merrill, who is with Sasaki. And then joining us virtually, we have Thomas Woltz, who is with NBW, and James Lima, who is with James Lima Planning and Development. And I'm going to hand it over to Fred now. For the sake of time, we're going to only take questions from members on the advisory committee, but the team will be here. So if you're a member of the audience and would like to speak with anybody afterwards, I'm sure you could grab those for greater clarification. But so I'm going to hand it over to Fred now.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. I come to you with great humility and respect for what we're about to start. My name's Fred Merrill. I think of me as the orchestra conductor. You'll hear briefly in a minute from Thomas Woltz and James Lima. We're really thrilled to have put Sasaki, Nelson Bird Woltz Landscape Architects, and James Lima Planning and Development together as a team. So I think that we use the word team a lot. So that's what we're talking about. Those three firms and the ASICO group is now part of our team. They're working separate. They're working for the Raleigh Center directly, but they're part of our team. So we're really thrilled to have them on our team as well. So again, let me just mention.
You can just stand over
Oh,
here.
can you all hear?
Or like maybe there.
Is this better?
You were a
all-
little too
can't
close to
hear?
that camera.
Okay.
No, it was more the view from the camera. It was just your sweater.
Oh my God.
I apologize.
Yeah, so anyway, you'll hear from Thomas and James in a minute, and you'll hear from other members of our team as we go through the agenda. The real goal for tonight, we want to get through some of this little presentation stuff in about half an hour or so. Then we want to spend the last hour trying to, I'll give James Lima credit for this, see if we can tease out some shared values, some shared goals that we all want to have guide this process. So if anyone's guiding, we're not going to finish it tonight. We just want to start the process. Because as planners and designers, we like to establish principles up front that represent the community. And we look at this process a little differently. This is not a developer-driven process. This is a community-driven process. So at the end of the day, if there's one thing I'd like you to remember tonight, we want to create a new community relationship with Union Pier. We want people to come, we'll get into the detail. We want to create a new community relationship with Union Pier. Okay, that's kind of something that's, and we're like very early on in the process, so we don't know a lot, but we do know a few things, and we're here with a great degree of humility and respect. So this is a great team we have: Sasaki, Nelson Bird Woltz Landscape Architects, JLP&D, and the ASICO group. And let me just, for the interest of time, oops, sorry. What did I do here? Here. Yeah, can you get me back to full screen? Yes, sir. They don't let me touch the technology. That's good about being an old guy, you know. Oh yeah, where's that thing? Yeah. Thank you. I can't screw it up. Okay, real quickly. So I'm going to introduce Sasaki Then I'm gonna ask Thomas Wolf to introduce NBW LA, and I'll ask James. And so real quick, I'm the project director. The buck stops with me. So you got a problem, I guess you gotta, I'm responsible, overall responsible. My partner, Alan Ward, is our urban design principal. He's an architect and a landscape architect and urban design principal. Margaret Leander, right over here, is gonna be our project manager, senior planner. Siki Zoo, urban planner and kind of cool technology dude, does stuff I don't even understand. Sudhisa Shen, she's not here. Eliza Decker's on the call. Eliza's an urban planner. Philip Dugdale, where's Philip? He's a senior associate principal landscape architect. On the call is Susanna Drake. She's a landscape architect and is a coastal resiliency expert. So that's a really cool thing to have on the team. Zach Christo is a civil engineer. Pete Oganek, also a civil engineer. So we got the whole band together here. I think with that, I'll turn it over to Thomas to introduce NBW. What do I have to do?
Just,
Thomas, are you there? Thank you.
Can't hear you.
I'm working on it.
Hang on. Wait. Hold on.
Apologies.
Yeah. If you can hear us, Thomas, they're working on it, so we can hear you. Yeah.
Try and speak, Thomas. One moment, sorry about that.
We've been here, we're here for 3 days. We're getting done with the end of the pool. We're learning a lot.
Here's working. So I'm not certain what, I think it may be a technical issue on Thomas's end. Yeah, okay. Yeah. James, if you could unmute and test your mic, just to make sure that we're receiving audio on our end.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes or no?
Thomas, yes, James, we can hear you. Thomas, I believe it may be a technical issue on your end.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Who's numbers 2?
Yeah.
Meeting info.
Mark, you want to? Oh, you want to call him?
I'm trying to see if I can find a column. The column would be for attendees, so that would be. Yeah, so he's not muted, so it's a computer issue on his end. He may need to enable Zoom to access his microphone. Apologies for the issue. Because it's not on our end, and he's in as a percentage, he's a panelist, so. So Thomas, if you can hear us, you may need to check your can you check your permissions in your computer settings to make sure that Zoom has access to your microphone? And or confirm that the mic that is selected is the correct mic.
Test 1, 2, 3.
Okay, very good.
You got lucky.
There we go.
You got lucky.
Excellent.
Okay.
Okay. Thomas Wolf.
Oh, no, we're going.
I'm just gonna, I'm making, Thomas is presenting, correct?
Yeah.
Very good.
No.
Oh, we may have spoke too soon.
We have you.
Now it's muted.
Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, now unmute again, Thomas. Nope, we lost you again.
Now can you hear me? Test 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, you're good. Okay.
Good evening, everybody. Hello, Charleston. I'm sorry about that. I could hear you perfectly, and I'm so sorry about that. Anyway, I'm very excited to be part of this. My name is Thomas Woltz with Nelson Bird Woltz Landscape Architects. I'm very excited to introduce you to principal of the firm, Mark Streeter, who is there in the room with you, and senior associate, Serena Nelson, and our amazing cultural ecologist and landscape designer, Jenny Lauer. And James, are you going to introduce your crew?
Sure. Good evening. I'm James Lima, delighted to be with you. And we're so excited to continue our work on Union Pier and have really enjoyed working with many of you in this process so far. I am joined by my colleagues, Paul Lillehaugen, who's a director at JLPD, and Carrie Dunphy, who's in the room with you, I believe. We will be the core team from JLPD.
And then last but not least, Atika Robinson from the Seco Group. Right. Like a late addition, I didn't get her on the slide.
Okay. Am I in? Okay, I can see myself.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Atika Robinson with the Seco Group, and I'm here with Victoria Felder. She's an engagement specialist as well on our team. We're excited to be here. We'll be partnering with all these amazing firms to ground them into engagement here in Charleston. So looking forward to sharing more with you later.
You'll be hearing more from her later. Okay, great. So I think what we'd like to do for a few minutes, Thomas, James, and I would like to just give you some real high-level project understanding ideas. I'm gonna let Thomas, why don't you start if you don't mind? It's under the concept of resetting, right? We're resetting, we're looking forward. We're not gonna go look about what happened in the past, we're all aware of it. We've learned, I'm sure we've learned a few things, but we're all about leaning forward and having a very robust community engagement plan. Driven by a community process. And that's the whole different twist of this thing than if you had a real estate developer bringing you a plan. But this is, you're the client, you and others, many others that we'll talk to are gonna help us create this program, this land use program that will be the basis for the plan. So you gotta be engaged and active. Okay, Thomas and James, please have at it.
Well, I guess I would open up with one of the exciting things about this new opportunity to rethink Union Pier is while we're engaging with the people of Charleston to hear their voice as it guides this new strategy for planning, we can also be listening to the site. Now, that might sound a little weird, but I mean that in the sense of listening really deeply and looking very carefully at the deep ecological history of the site of Union Pier, as well as its evolution over time, because somewhere in that research lies the authentic essence of a design gesture that only belongs to Charleston and only belongs to Union Pier. And when we start with the public space and the public needs and the public use of a landscape, as we begin planning exercises, I think we yield very, very different results that satisfy the needs of a city, not only now, but for a very long and resilient future. And we create places that you know, that you remember, that only belong in Charleston. So even at this upper level, and I'll talk about it later with some of the slides we have, really just even as tonight's the kickoff, starting to look at what has happened on this piece of land over time. How has it evolved? And how can that guide the design process? Really listening to the land and people first.
Great, thank you. And James, how about from your, James, his firm is going to bring the economic and financial realities to this project. So James, please.
Yeah, I have the unenviable task of trying to help you figure out how to pay for something better. And it's what we do. I'm actually here in Key West working on another project with Sasaki to improve a central waterfront experience and figure out how to program it and fund it and really make it a much more additive experience to the center city. You know, our most beloved public places, civic spaces, buildings, and most infrastructure have rarely been paid for directly by the private sector. successful public-private partnerships, particularly transformational reuse of old industrial waterfronts, which have almost by definition extraordinary redevelopment costs, are almost always funded with some combination of early patient capital funding from various levels of government, the private sector, and philanthropy. And so we want to help you explore those models and see, test a range of scenarios that say, under these different scenarios, what does that allow for in terms of the residual value that can be invested back into the property, as opposed to working very hard, like the last scenario, to just try to cover the basic costs, which it's an unsustainable model, frankly, given the uniqueness and the incredible opportunity of your central waterfront.
Great, thank you. So, why are we here? We're here to help, I think he uses a great word, elevate the voices. We were here to broaden and deepen the participants in this process and to elevate voices that have not been heard. We want this to be as broad and inclusive, non-transactional. This is about us listening and trying to understand and channel, what we're hearing from the community. And it's going to be interesting. This is not done every day. So we're a little bit on a journey together. That's going to be fun. It's going to be educational. It's going to have bumps in the road. We're not always going to agree on stuff. We're not going to get 100% consensus. I guarantee you that. But we're going to get close. We're going to try. We're going to do the best we can to get the Venn diagram to converge as much as possible. So again, these are just, I want to read all stuff to you. When we responded to the RFI, these were some points that we put out there that, we understand waterfront access is a big issue. We want to complement the urban design architectural character of the district. We want this to deal with workforce housing for sure. That's we work all over the country. Nobody has enough workforce housing. Housing is a critical issue everywhere. The coastal resiliency plan, Susanna Drake's expert here can be helpful there. And the water plan, is going on, and we're learning about that and how there's a lot of great work there that we can plug into, which is fantastic. Robust community engagement, we'll talk about that more later. Public transparency of financing, James mentioned that briefly. And then at the end of the day, maximizing public benefits, a sense of place and culture and character. We really, we use these words, but we actually do mean these words. And as James and Thomas, do you want to add anything to this?
No, sir. Yeah, I think you've got it.
Okay, I'll take implied consent.
Absolutely.
It's good.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Brad.
Oh, the process, I'm a planner, this is my big thing. The process is important as the product. If we don't get the process right here, if we don't listen, we don't include everybody, the product doesn't matter, okay? So this is another mantra you'll hear us talk about over and over again. The process is important as a product. Okay, now that you can stop hearing me very quickly. The Tika, sorry. Tika is going to come up with Siki from my firm and our firm, and going to talk about community engagement. So the Tika, we're really thrilled to have the Tika Robinson of the Seco Group here. Still getting all the names. I will stumble occasionally, sorry.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah. So introduce yourself real quickly, Siki.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I'll go first.
Well, there.
Hi, I'm CT. I'm an associate principal planning from Sasaki. Apologies if my casualness is best. I just came from airplane this morning. So thank you for having our team, having me here. Really happy, privileged to be here for this meeting.
All right, so as we ground into engagement, it's easy to check the box and say, like, we've done engagement or get comfortable with a process. Once we look at who we want to target and what's the typical ways of engaging. For those of you who are from Charleston and also those of you who have lived here for years, you know that Charleston is a very special city. It's very unique and we're built on relationships, on preserving our culture and also the connection we have to this land and this community. And that is whether you're a Benya or Kamia, we give you grace if you're a Kamia. But one of the things for the SECO playing in this role and working with all these amazing firms is that it's very important for me as a person that's from here to understand that the calling in this work is not just about engaging the community, but it's about the real lived experiences. It's the stories, it's the people who call this place home. And when the land changes and the things around them change, they get very nervous. And especially when you're not aware of meetings like this, it can remove you from the process because all you see is buildings coming up or things changing in your community. And that makes you feel very disconnected. And it also threatens you in a feeling of not feeling like you belong to a community that you've called home or your family has called home for generations. So when I lean into this space and with any space that I lean into, with any work that I do, it's very important to me to acknowledge that and leverage that in the space amongst all the specialists that are working, not to replace their work because they know engagement, they've done it in various other cities, but to remind them of the rich culture that's here and that I represent that. My ancestors are from here. My ancestors are counting on me to make sure that those voices are heard from the Indigenous community that's here. As the land and water changes, it's important to ensure that the people still feel connected to those changes and all that development that comes for their not only current families, but generations to come.
We, by talking to the GECO, our team really understood how special Charleston is and what a careful and bespoke approach we need in engaging the community here. So today, everything we're showing afterwards is not a fully baked plan, far from that. These are really just things we're thinking about as we're developing the approach. Some of the things we're thinking about right now as we're starting that process is asking ourselves some really hard questions. Who are the people whose voices need elevating in the process? Why are we talking to these folks? What do we need from them? What are the conversations that need to be had and how do we have them? These are the elements of the approach that we're starting to develop on this visit. And I should also say that, for us, there is no such thing as best practices, which is to say that there's no shake and bake rote engagement approach. Every place is different. Charleston especially is a really special place. And whether it's creating by drawing the community or using virtual reality to talk to the community, we want to bring the right methods, the right tools to this community. And we've been having some conversations even earlier today about what that might look like in Charleston.
And when we think of best practices, one of the things I wanted to elevate up is I've had the opportunity to work on the comprehensive plan in the midst of a pandemic, as well as currently on the Peninsula plan right now, and have truly enjoyed the opportunity to work with them as well as on the climate action plan for Charleston County. But I wanted to say that, when you have access to people in urban spaces where we're close, it's a lot different than when you're accessing people in rural spaces. And as we look to not only the peninsula as people have a close proximity to it, we're looking at relationships of people, how they engage with the peninsula as a whole, whether they live here, they work here, or they play here. And also considering how do we bring them back for those that have felt like they no longer belong, and how do we engage them? So that means we will also have to go out and engage. And so I wanted to share here to lift up. This is oh, you can't see me?
No, you're good.
Okay. I wanted to elevate an example of what authentic engagement looks like. This is a small town in St. Stephen in Berkeley County. This population is extremely small. It's literally like going through another time zone and a time warp. But the people there are real. They live there, they call that place home, and they are very protective of it. Through working with community keepers, I was able to engage everyone in this space, and this room was actually standing room. And from EPA's perspective, they never had a group that big to show up for any brownfield conversations. The reason why I show you this is not because to look at this, but to look at it from a even in the rural communities, people feel connected and feel protective of the land that they call home. We will be using the same authentic processes to engage the community as a whole around their relationship with the peninsula and specifically around Union Pier.
So some of the things we're starting to think about and talk about today, one of those things that Tika mentioned is all of the rich stories that exist in Palestine. So our process, whatever it ends up being, is going to start by listening to those stories, really amplifying them, making sure that our team understands what those are, and synthesizing them. There is a whole bunch of ways we can do that, whether that's by way of these digital tools that we've developed, or by having just walking towards some conversations with the community. We're agnostic, right? We're going to do the right thing, but ultimately it's all about making sure that we hear those unique stories and unique experiences that's in the ground up process. And along with that, we also think it's really important to bring some data into this conversation, right? Every development option on the site is going to result in tangible impacts on the economics of the project, on the climate resilience outcomes on the site. And we think it's really important to bring those data points into the conversation with the community to make sure we really understand the trade-offs, right? Because decisions need to be made. We have to understand, what do we stand to gain and lose by making any decisions on site. And finally, it is about talking to people, right? So we want to make sure that we bring the community into the conversation, into the design process, and we could do that by pulling them in, by having these large events, these moments where we might bring them onto the site and experience the site collectively, or by actually going out to where people are, lowering the barrier to engagement and creating these more intimate one-on-one conversations around certain topics. And again, we've had some conversations today about what this might look like in Charleston, and you might have some ideas here.
Yeah. So what you can see, which one of the things that I loved when I looked at the picture in the middle was the simulation. So for everyone who won't have the opportunity to come, to Union Pier and actually experience it on the grounds, we have the opportunity to create a simulation for them to actually walk it and co-create an experience that if I was in this space, what would it look like? So those are some examples of what we will do, and also tying in children. They are our next generation and our future. This is a great opportunity to educate them on a space that is here in Charleston that they might not know of, and a space that hopefully they will want to stay and have their children be here and for generations to come. So again, and also keeping in mind, everyone doesn't learn the same. I'm a very creative and visual learner, and I'm very hands-on. If I was having to imagine, I would want to experience it. So creating all the opportunities possible to do that with every participant is what makes this a unique process as we move forward. I mean, we literally have like a blank slate, concrete, a blank slate to do something pretty amazing. And so with various feedback and different ways of engaging, we can make that happen.
And one last thing we just quickly want to say here is, we care a lot about making sure that this is an inclusive process, and we're going to hold ourselves accountable. And the way we do that is by tracking, for example, the age, race, and other kinds of representativity of the people that came into the engagement process, constantly looking at this data, and of course, correct as needed, right? We're not going to do this once at the end of the process. We're going to be looking at this every, at all the key milestones and make sure, are we getting the right people in the room? And if not, what can we do to rectify that in the coming phases? So we want to do this as a matter of best practice. Again, holding ourselves accountable. And then just, maybe in closing, just to say that we're actually really excited for this conversation, right? This is a really, really amazing opportunity to talk to Charleston and learn something about the city. And every member of our team, Sasaki, Asiko Group, Nelson Berg Woltz, James Klima, we've all done this kind of work, whether it's in Greenwood, Baton Rouge, where we talked to 5,000 community members and really translated that engagement into tangible design principles and design outcomes, or in the case of this project, Angel Oak Preserve, we've done this kind of work, and of course, the TICA's work here in Charleston needs no, recap elaboration. And with her guidance, we're really excited to be doing this, and I think we're going to do a good job. Any closing remarks?
I just wanted to just say, all of us understand the importance of working with a team and understanding where we come from to collaborate on something. And I will say that if this team does not have the right synergy, and if we don't trust each other, and if we don't practice engagement together collectively, then it will be felt out in the community. And just with being together today, you could feel the passion, the commitment to get it right, and not the egos on the table, but literally, I know my work, but I'm leaning into something pretty amazing and special, and we all want to collaboratively work together to get this right. So by all the teams you see here, we're excited to move forward to make that happen.
Thank you.
I would say we have an ego project. Now I can go first. So we will be gratified personally if this project is a success. I would say, I think the TICA today, we were talking to you, you had a great idea that I just want to give you credit for. We want to bring people to Union Pier site on a consistent basis throughout this process. I was amazed how many people will say, well, Union Pier, where is it? I just have this vague notion, it's thing that, so I thought that was a brilliant idea. So we'll be bringing you down there, and then we'll bring other people down there. So we'll be going to the people, and we'll bring the people to the site. So I think we want to have a two-way thing going on there. Margaret, you want to continue the conversation?
Hello, everyone. Margaret Leander, Associate Principal and Urban Planner. Today, we want to talk a little bit at a high level about the process, really about the timing over the next few months, and engagement, and also just sort of our general proposed approach. So I'll start off with a few slides, and then we'll hear from Thomas and James a little bit more. I think one of the most important things we wanted to acknowledge just up front is really sort of the pivotal moment that we're at right now in terms of all the other planning activities that are happening. And the opportunity that really presents for Union Pier and this new process in terms of alignment, and also just making sure that we're working towards the same shared goals. So as you heard earlier today from Chloe about the water plan and the peninsula plan, we will really want to be working closely with the planning team, with the city, to make sure that we are identifying touch points throughout our process, making sure that we're working in alignment with them. So just as a point up front, in terms of our process, I think this is still something we're working through, and at later date, we'll be sharing more details with all of you. But as Fred mentioned before, we are starting off really in this sort of engagement phase of listening, learning, understanding, really starting now and really into the winter. And this is, as Chiquita was saying, not something that we just check the box with up front, that we have up front in the beginning of the process. This is something we really carry through throughout the whole process. So following this first phase, we'll start getting into a little bit more site analysis, really getting into some scenarios with the ultimate goal really of building a consensus around a final design concept for the end of spring, early summer. And really leaving the summer months for the PUD process.
Excuse me, Rob or Kendra, Dale Morris, water plan specifically for Union Pier, isn't on there, and that's supposed to be completed and submitted by the end of the year.
So, nope.
So, I mean, this is intended to illustrate that, sort of the end of December, early January timeframe for their, of course, they've already been working, but they added the here, and so that's what's being added.
Thank you.
So we also wanted to just highlight today sort of our general approach as a team, as we've been discussing and hearing these first few days, sort of these three overarching principles, I guess you would say, in terms of the planning process and where we're coming from. I think the first one really being the sort of workshop-oriented approach, really making sure that we're designing the process across a series of workshops that, as CP and Katika were just saying, really include a wide range of engagement platforms, really making sure that we are reaching across all scales, from the neighborhood scale to the regional scale, but also providing platforms that, range from individual conversations to smaller focus groups to large, open houses in the evening, and making sure this is something that is throughout the process. And secondly, we really believe in sort of developing and fostering a holistic development strategy. And that's something you'll really see across all of our teams, sort of being able to balance the community benefits with the realities that we're dealing with, the market and the climate, but also really honing in on those sort of key issues that we know we'll need to address with the plan, from attainable housing, economic development, jobs, and once again, coastal resilience. Third point, I think we really believe in integrated design ethos. And hopefully you can see today that we're bringing a team of really represents a wide range of industry experts. We think we'll be able to balance each other out well and really sort of understand the need for the site to reflect the surrounding existing urban fabric, but also contend with the changing and evolving environmental and climate and cultural needs of the site. So now I'll pass it to James, if you're there.
No, I think this one's to me.
Sorry, Thomas.
Thanks, Thomas Woltz again. Just wanted to flesh out what I said in my introductory brief comments about a research-based design process yielding a real authentic sense of place. And people often look at Union Pier as 60 to 70 acres of concrete, and there actually is a lot going on under the surface, and a lot that I think could start to anchor design concepts that would be very placeful for the people of Charleston. We just, we haven't had much time yet, but just looking at this aerial, you can start to see these fingers of estuary and water and what used to be there when East Bay was in fact the edge of the peninsula. So looking to tell the ecological history, but also the cultural history, because if you look back over just the way our species has developed and spread around the world, we come for an ecology. We come for the protection that the peninsula provided, or for the rich fishing waters. Human beings come to a place for the ecologies that shape them. And so when we reveal those, I think we reconnect people to the story of land. Next. And just already at the highest level, there are sort of three emergent narratives, each kind of connected to water, but in a different way, thinking of the customs house as the connection to the global flow of trade and commerce that Charleston was known for, and it made it an internationally powerful city. But also the ruins of the Bennett rice mill, and understanding how the history of the cultivation of rice, and also being on the edge of the Cooper River, we're reminded that the low country of Charleston, the low country of South Carolina, is one of the largest earthworks on the planet Earth. Human-made cultivation of rice, manipulating this marginal terrain between water and land. So the rice mill becomes representative of so much more than just the industrial heritage of that one mill that was also, I believe, part sawmill, part rice mill. So, that starts to connect to the why of Charleston. What was the source of wealth of Charleston at a very, very big scale? And so that becomes the authentic moment of a reminder of its history. And then to the northernmost area, there's a little bit of wetland area remnant wetland trying to come back around the northern edge of Union Pier, and thinking that might be an exciting place to start to tell the Gullah Geechee history and the Mosquito Fleet as it connects. It's very proximate to the International African American Heritage Museum. So those are just at the highest level, a few narratives that start to emerge on a place that many people might say is empty and doesn't have any history or culture to it. But already we're seeing the possibility of these anchor narratives for the public space. Next, please. And so, why are we creating a new way forward? You think about just those narratives and you look at the aerial on the right and you think we need these cultural anchors to tell our story, to make this feel stitched into the past and the future of Charleston. We also need very creative landscape design coupled inseparable from civil engineering to create elegant, beautiful, and resilient solutions at this coastal edge. You can see even on the flood map, the creek that was the drainage way that went down the side of the customs house is actually Market Street that floods every time it rains. So the water is trying to come back to its ancient footprint. So finding ways to allow that and to build a more resilient edge, looking at the future of Charleston. I'm going to turn it over to James now.
Thomas is always hard to follow, but it's exactly why we love working with Nelson Verwolz. Some of you may have heard me speak to some of what I'm about to share when the Preservation Society of Charleston invited me to speak on the Union Pier panel in April. I offered some provocations, which actually felt welcomed from the feedback we got. I want to talk a little bit about the economics of place making for sure, and very much place keeping, to the point that was made earlier about really honoring community heritage, going back many hundreds of years, thousands of years, right? What was this place? Who was here? And who is it for? We'll look at the broader economic and social benefits of place, at the city level and beyond, as well as well-established sort of real estate value premiums attributable to proximity to really high quality public spaces. So arguing not just for the thing that we know we want, which is a great and compelling and civically generous central city riverfront, but also to understand that in creating exceptional public spaces, we're generating enormous incremental market demand for the experience of those places, which translates into real estate value, which allows us to capture some of that value and cycle it back into the economy of the site in ways that are extremely helpful to project economics, both to build it and to sustain it over time. Next. We know that more than ever, people have never had more choices. I mean, not everyone, but many people have more and more choices about where to work, where to live, where to visit, where to study, and that people are choosing vibrant places. And places are spaces plus people, and they're places that are welcoming, that are diverse, that are active day and night, that feel safe and clean and tended to and comfortable, but again, civically generous, and places of community and connection. And this sounds like the soft side of economic development, but it's very much foundational to all the work that we see at every scale of city, community, large and small, throughout North America. And we know that to create these compelling places, whether it's an extension of an internationally renowned place like Charleston to its water's edge in this new opportunity, or starting something new, place needs investment. Next slide. And so it's very much about understanding all the assets that you already have and working to better connect them to one another. The connections between Union Pier and adjacent neighborhoods, right, matters greatly. And the arrival experience, the gateways through the site toward the riverfront matter greatly. When we talk about creating vibrant communities, we could talk for hours about this. It's really about the core practice of ours, which is equitable economic and community development. Who is Union Pier for? who will live here, who will work here, who will visit here, what range of quality housing will be here and at what price points and for whom, what small business opportunities will be here, particularly for women and BIPOC-owned entrepreneurs. Who's the steward of the place? Who's maintaining it and programming it? How are the decisions being made each year about what money is made available to maintain and operate the place? And who has a seat at the table to decide these things? These are all important parts of creating vibrant communities and understanding, like, how do we fund affordable housing in the state of South Carolina? And what are the capital stack opportunities? What is this unique moment with so much funding flowing from the federal government for infrastructure and resilience and technology and workforce training and the like? And to create value in this iterative way, in this interdisciplinary team, not just for the sake of creating a high-end, expensive, exclusive neighborhood, which is exactly what I think we all agree we don't want, but to unlock value with an intention to create mechanisms to capture it and to internally cross-subsidize within the economy of Union Pier, if you will, to do the things and pay for some of the things that the private market may not do on its own, that government, as we know, doesn't always have the money to sustain continually, particularly for public realm maintenance. And to redirect some of that captured value toward the things that are your priorities, that are your goals, that really reflect your values. So we don't know what those things are necessarily. I mean, we have a pretty good idea from the conversations, but this will be a process to say, well, we've got to pay for a lot of things. How do we balance the opportunity to generate value and allow the private market to do what it's going to do, while first really safeguarding a public realm and getting that public realm framework right? We think of great streets and parks, waterfronts especially, as the organizers of private development. If you get the framework right, then you can allow for a lot of flexibility over time for the thing that we're not going to be particularly good at knowing for sure what will ultimately happen, right? Because if this is built out over 20 years, 25 years, economies change, markets change, demand changes. So if you have a great system of streets and open spaces and parks and great access to the riverfront, you can have that kind of flexibility, but you're creating the quality and the identity of place. You're creating the value based around your values that is going to be part of the public-private partnership funding and financing structure. And then lastly, just one quick thing about the value of parks, which is to say there are a whole bunch of ways that parks and open space, next slide, please, where parks are the center of so much benefit and value, from tax revenue and tourism to equity and health and wellness and social cohesion and environmental restoration and regeneration. So there are all the ways that we want to think about these systems and these interrelationships of a great public realm to all the other goals and objectives here. Thank you.
Thanks, James. Great. Thank you. That's the end of the presentation. Now we're gonna get you to talk to us. I'm gonna ask Marty to come with me. Thank you, everybody. I think you can see our team is big and diverse and a little messy. It's all good, right? We bring a lot of different perspectives to the table. So what I'd like to do now is shift the thing for the next hour, whatever, how long we can take it. We'd like you to talk to us. And I think the measure of success in the next hour would be that each one of you says something to us. And if you don't, I may call you out until you do say something. But I really want to, I don't mean to be crazy, but I just want you to feel comfortable talking to us, because I think building trust at the end of the day, is what this is all about, and it starts with a conversation. And so that's as simple as that. So there's, let me just go through three quick questions. You can riff off it however you want. This doesn't have to be a linear thing. What are the measures of success for New Wave forward for Union Pier? I think you saw these comments in the agenda, hopefully. Do you foresee what kind of roadblocks or what keeps you up at night worrying about this project? And how do we create a platform to listen and learn from voices that have previously been underrepresented? Maybe we'll start with this one first. How about it? And I don't know, Mr. Huff. Well, thank you for raising your hand. Go first.
Well, I got involved in this project quite late. I've never been involved in a formal way, just as a citizen. I remember attending some of the meetings and I didn't recognize anybody there. In the sense I knew people, I didn't see the city as we know it. When you started your discussion, you said the stakeholder committee is your client. No, we're filling seats.
Yeah,
We're representing a much larger constituency. That's an entire region. And I think that sometimes when we look at projects on the peninsula, we tend to have a myopic sensibility about it. We focus on the peninsula. The peninsula is the urban center, it's the identity of this region. But there's West Ashley.
Yeah.
Much bigger, very important. The regions north of us, the associated municipalities, all of those are a part of the same mix. And so I think we need to be very deliberate about what we do. And the reason I put my hand up, because I've been waiting for this opportunity for us as a committee to engage this process. And so back in, this is my notes here, this is August 27th. I just put together a list so I could understand the challenges. I was not involved with the process as such. So some quick synopsis that I did. One is time. Initially, when the low plan failed, we had this acceleration to get things done. So time has a way of making things happen quickly. And sometimes it puts pressures when there need to be pressures. So it's up to you all to tell us how much time you really need to do this properly. Because the time zone or the time period that we have, I would hope that there may be some flexibility so we can feel like we've accomplished everything we need to do in terms of engagement. The project too, again, at the beginning, the cost, just the, anybody, any developer that comes in, just to pay the ticket price to walk in the door is enormous.
Yeah.
For an economy such as Charleston. And so that's a challenge that drives everything, that drives density, it drives the scale. It drives the kind of place this needs to be a commercial and success. Right? So those are difficult challenges to deal with right there. And the scale of it, great cities are made in small increments. Right, they're organic things. In Charleston, if we look at the history of the peninsula, it's an organic growth. Somebody asked me the other night when I took some of your folks up to Dockside Review, it says, this was a fortified city. Yeah, we fortified it. That wasn't big enough. We fortified it some more and fortified it some more because it kept expanding. And so we need to sort of understand that the scale of something like this and the integration of something that's going to happen in the history of our community in a 20-25 year period, it's going to have profound impacts, many of which we can't even anticipate. We think we can, we hope we can. For example, we have one of America's most robust commercial downtowns, right? Walking down King Street, there's a joy, active businesses there. We can't kill that in our decision makings. We can't create a new retail center that might kill the thing that keeps this place sort of balanced in many ways. So I think that's really important. The thing that was absent in the first process was transparency.
That's, kind of what we're getting at here.
And people were scrambling to understand some of the rigors of the process. And I think it's important. I know that this, I don't speak for everyone, but I think everyone would agree that we want to be transparent. I'm glad that this is now a public affair, which people can tune in. And facilitation. Just so happens that we're at a nexus in this community with this big project. Comp plan, water plan, updated zoning. There's a lot of moving parts that are happening at the right time.
Right.
So typically, these things are not in sync. So
Right.
you're having to catch up, but we have the advantage now at this crossroads.
They're
to
kind of
make good
connected.
decisions. And the other important issue, I think, is the idea of equity. As I said, I grew up in this town. I practiced here, taught here for many years. And it's disheartening when I go to community functions in which we don't have representation throughout the community. And so I think their work is so critically important, because in order for this project to happen, the city is gonna have to, where's Rick?
Hiding here.
Yeah. Rounds up about the number I heard for some of the infrastructure investment was maybe 275 million. We know damn well that's gonna be $500 million. Right? That's a major commitment the city is gonna be making over time to realize this project, which it should do. It's part of the responsibility that you spell. But at the same time, we have a responsibility broadly to say, we don't want to just have people at the table talking. We need programming that's going to begin to readjust the inequities and the imbalances we have. It isn't just racial. There's a huge caste difference in our community. It's just never been addressed. And has an opportunity to do that. So if they need to have public housing, affordable housing, and now we're calling it attainable housing. But quite frankly, you can only build what's so cheap, and it's not worth building that. So you've got to create wealth in the community to afford these kinds of enterprises. So we've got to look at this in a much broader way. And I know that's not your job, and it's not a support.
Kind of our job.
But it's the job of everybody to say, how can this tremendously important project, the largest redevelopment we would have had in the city at any one time, how does that benefit the much broader community, the west of the Ashlands, the Neck, even Mount Pleasant? They are a part of this family of communities, right? So I think that's going to be really critically important to do this. The marketplace takes care of a lot of things that a lot of people, because by definition, it excludes a great deal. So we want a process to figure out a way that this project can be a pivot for addressing long-term concerns. Mosquito fleet needs to be represented as a crucial part of our history. But let's not just create a memorial to mosquito fleet without addressing concerns that those people dealt with 100 years ago.
Okay, thank you. That was wonderful. How about others? I want to maybe, Brian, you have some thoughts?
I do. First of all, I want to say kudos to the presentation. The presentation for me was amazing, very informative, very thought-invoking for me. And it also made me feel like everything that you said, that you want to see inclusivity there, that you want to hear the unheard voices. And those are some of the things that I want this project, this development to be representative of. I come from the east side communities of Charleston. The people that are underrepresented, those persons who are not heard at the table because they don't even have a place at the table. And so I'm sort of like Fatika. I'm here to be a listening ear and a representative voice for that community. And so I love the idea and the concept of being inclusive and having this development to actually hear those voices and bring the concerns, bring the voices to the table to say, this is what we would also like to see. This is what we would also like to have representative in this development. This is what we would also like to have as part of the culture of the city of Charleston, because we have a very rich culture here in Charleston, and we all want to be included in this development. So how does that look? How does that look for underrepresented people who are not in a financial place to be able to afford to be a part of the lived experience of such a development? How are we going to make that happen? And I think Mr. Huff alluded to that in all that he was saying. You know, we want to be considered at the financial table when it comes to housing. And what is it? Is it attainable housing? Is it workforce housing? What type, is it affordable housing? What type of housing? How does that look in this development? How is the cohesion brought about? Where is the weaving of all the fabric come into place so that the quilt incorporates everyone? You know, so
Quilt is great.
yeah, so that we want the patches and the pieces to formulate this beautiful thing that comes out of this development, so that when it is presented, it's an artwork, it's an art form. And that is also representative of all that Charleston brings to the table with all the arts and everything else that we bring. And I do too. I'm not considered about how this development would affect King Street, you know, if it comes about, because I was a part of that late night committee that worked towards trying to make, you know, trying to have ideas so that Charleston is this vibrant city that brings about a balance between its residents and having vibrant places for us to enjoy as a community of not only beignets, but as a community.
I'm not one of them, I know that.
We want to welcome all of that, because that's all part of the quilt. That's all part of the peacemaking. That's all part of the patchwork. And so I really my perception really changed, because in my mind, I did not want, because we hear developers come to our community all the time with promises to do this, and then we offer them our vote of support with the city, and then it's nothing like what they've told us. And that's exactly what I don't want to see. That's the experience I don't want to have. You know, so.
Thank you. I just want to make sure everybody gets a chance. Jerry, you wanna?
Sure.
Go for it, man.
All right.
Yes.
Well, thank you all. Great presentation so far, and we're excited about next steps for sure. So I think I'll start with an invitation, and maybe I'll say it to Fred, and we'll figure out how to invite as many of you as can walk through our neighborhood of Ansonboro, and I'll help coordinate that. It's
We'll
not
pick
big.
up on it for sure.
It's not big. We've got about 10 small blocks that are residential, that are completely surrounded by commercial. And we are right across East Bay Street from Union Pier. So we stand to be directly impacted. There's no way around it. Let's try and make it as great as we can.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and because I'm here representing those residents there, they would expect me I'm gonna go ahead and say things that we're concerned about, and we'll be working with all of you on this, is the traffic impact. When we talk about livability, and I said this before with the Riley Center has the word livable in the title. Let's keep it livable. So traffic, the water, and the density there. So
Okay.
look forward to it, but let's walk through the neighborhood.
Any thoughts on this in particular, or, I mean, you
No,
don't, I mean, I'm
absolutely.
just trying to get you guys to talk, so,
Yeah.
okay. How about Vince?
Oh, boy, you want me to follow those?
Yeah, you got, yeah.
Mine's a little different approach, and I understand what you're saying and agree with what the previous people have said, and also the presentation was really quite good. Living right next door to Union Pier, we have a little bit of fear in felt as to how is it going to be built? What's the water in particular is extremely important. How do you handle that, particularly during construction? Density is on everybody's mind, and I think we got a really good picture, and it kind of builds on what one of the presenters said before. I think it was Tika, where she talked about, you know, the images that you can show, and the societies put together an image showing the sheer bulk of the Union Pier development as it was being proposed to the surrounding neighborhoods. And it really pointed out, it just really didn't look like it fit. So we're extremely interested in that density and not going down that same path again. And then some things that you did allude to in here, and the Post and Courier talked about this past week or two, is when I talked to a developer and they said, how do you look at a piece of land? And they said, well, we don't look at a piece of land. He said, we look at the zoning and we see what is it that I can construct. And then they look and they say, okay, what from a marketing perspective can I sell that for? And when they put all the numbers together, they subtract it and they say, that's what I'll pay for the land. And I think, I don't know what that supposed price is, but I think the perceived price for the property is one of the drivers of the density. And I think at some point that's compromising the design from a personal perspective. And I think at some point we have to look at that and talk about it as a committee. Sure. Is what is a reasonable price? Because it does drive a lot of what happens.
Thank you. How about Sunday?
That is my, I'd like to continue to listen. I'm actually a proxy person here from Laquita tonight, and I'm very, very interested and have been in Union Pier. And had the pleasure and consternation of hearing all the comments that were made at the low presentation, and all the different representations there. And my brain is just 1,000 different directions on how we're going to.
I know how you feel.
I mean, I really, how we are going to appeal to all the needs and then affect the realities of the expense of maintaining and sustaining what we want to be there. And I'm gonna have a lot to say in the future.
That's fine. Yeah, this is just a warm up.
This is, but I'm still listening. Thank you.
How about Rick?
I just interject to remember that we do have a member on Zoom.
Oh,
Josh is here too.
am I
so-
doing something wrong here?
No, just
Okay.
he's trying
Oh,
to
yeah.
Josh as well.
Let's go with Rick and then we'll go to the.
Yeah, we want to hear Josh. You know, I think you're starting off the right way. I mean, my fear is that Union Pier could become an island unto itself. And we can't allow that to happen. We really have to try to seamlessly stitch it into the communities that surround it, not only Anston Borough, but East Side, and try and find a way to do that. And listening to folks is the most important thing, because a lot of those voices have never been heard, as people have said in the past. And your task is unenviable, because it is, you know, attending a lot of the forums and sessions on the past proposal. It was many of the same people at the same, coming to the same forum, saying the same things, and the outreach to include a larger community was not as extensive as it should have been or could have been. And I think everybody tried, but that's the most important. My fear of Charleston is in all the things that we're doing now, we're losing sort of the soul of the city, and the soul of the city reflects a lot of what Ray was talking about and Sunday was talking about. We're having folks who truly represent what a lot of people come to Charleston to see are being lost. So we've got to make sure that those voices are heard and listened to.
Yeah, the soul of the city, the tapestry. We're getting some great Very vibrant words here. Thank you. Josh, I think, Josh, you're online. I don't wanna, you wanna have at it?
Sure. I've enjoyed the dialogue, and I think a lot of the opening presentation were things that we've discussed to some degree. The real struggle is going to be how do we achieve all the things that we say we want. Open green space is important. It's a necessary amenity, but we want to balance that with attainability and workforce housing. I mean, we are going to have a conversation about what is an appropriate level of density. And I thought Mr. Lima's comments about the economics of placemaking are important and will help drive a lot of these conversations in the meetings and months to come. So.
Great, thanks. Is there anybody else online or?
No, Edward had to drop off.
Okay, Brian raised his hand. So
Sure.
you raise your hand. You're getting
First, I just want to credit my colleagues for a really good high level of dialogue, and I want to build on what Ray said, that we are a committee representing a large swath of the community. Preservation Society has over 4,000 members in the community. And we're not a monolith in terms of so it's my job to really balance the things that I've heard from people. And I recognize this question you've asked as to how to get more people to the table is a critical question, because I think we're strong in our diversity in this community, and the more points of view that we're able to incorporate here, the stronger this plan is going to be. And we're 100% on that. On board with that. We will, to that end, we will support your efforts to get people out there. I think getting people, in particular school kids, out on the site would be an amazing thing to do. I think the real opportunity here that we don't see a lot in the rezoning context is that this is a community driven process. We have this opportunity to tell people that this is not a developer who's driving the plan. And for those who are a little bit suspect of rezoning processes, that it's sort of it's just in the bag. Actually, people will be able to see themselves in this plan. And if the deliverable is a planned unit development, as it was last time, there's a lot of capacity and flexibility that we're going to be able to build into that plan, that we can put the values of the community. So my hope at the end of the day is that people are going to be able to see themselves. And because of that, more people are going to be driven to participate in this process than decided to in the last time. And again, I think getting people out there, listening to the land, as Thomas said, I think by going out there, it really is the only way to do that. So I hope we'll have that chance. Thank you.
Sure, well, thank you. I commend the team for working together. I'm very excited about the process and very hopeful about what can happen here. I think the challenge with the way the developer ran the process last time was that they didn't ask us what we wanted. They asked us what we thought about what they proposed.
That's it. Okay, wait. Okay, I got it. Okay, that's different. It's very different.
It's very different.
Yeah.
And I think now that we have an opportunity to ask the community, what would you like to see on the site? We have a great opportunity here. In addition, we didn't really answer the question of what do we need? And so our needs include not just getting the water out of Anson Borough in exchange for building up 12 feet, but we also need resilience. We need to be able to deal with floodwaters and have a plan that reflects the whole city's approach to rising sea level, the opportunity to revive some marshes and have bio mechanisms to help hold floodwater. And so I think a realistic approach, an authentic approach, where we truthfully answer the question, what will be the experience of buildings on the site? And what do we as a city need to do to deal with it? That approach, I think, will help us get to a solution where people feel less scary.
Thanks a lot. We're getting really great. Cash in? Sorry.
Cash in.
Cash in, thank you.
Nice to see you. Thank you. Really inspired by the comments of the folks on the steering committee, and would wholeheartedly agree with those about this, bringing some folks to the table that haven't been here prior and listening to those voices.
our city's history is, since our founding, has been tied to the water, to the two rivers that surround us. And it has shaped who we are as a community, it has shaped our economy, it has shaped our history, it's shaped our development patterns, both good and bad. And I think that there's an underrepresented voice of that site that wasn't listened to in the prior effort to redevelop it, that we didn't listen to the site itself and what's possible there. Union Pier, as Mr. Wolf showed us on the historic maps, has changed a lot over the years. And we need to figure out what's truly possible for the site from a resilience standpoint. Because whatever happens at Union Pier is, of course, going to affect particularly the rest of the peninsula. So we need to make sure that the site itself and the resilience possibilities and what we actually can do there is a voice that's at the table.
Thanks a lot. I think Scott,
Thank you.
yeah.
First of all, congratulations. What a great start. I think everybody's echoing.
Let's not get too excited yet.
But you're not serious. I think there's a great, you guys have exceeded. I had very, very high expectations and you've exceeded. So.
Yeah, well, thank you. We appreciate that. We appreciate that. We really do. We got a way to go.
Good job. I wanted to double down on what Ray had talked about listening to the underrepresented. And I think that there is a group of underrepresented that we need to put on the table at the start. And it's not necessarily the folks that we might typically think of as the underrepresented. This property originally was owned by the city. So the city, had they still owned it, would have had a duty to all of its citizens, not just the ones that are closest, but all of its citizens. It's now owned by a state agency, which has a duty to all of the citizens.
She's sitting right over there.
Exactly. So I think some of the underrepresented are those that go beyond. And that we have to think about that. The second thing I would like to see as a measure of success is at the outset, we start to imagine who are these people that are going to live here? What do they look like? How much money do they might make? What kind of wealth do they have? What kind of jobs do they have? Can they live there? What kind of jobs will they have if they work there? One of the sort of the balancing problems of density is that if it's too low in density, now start to imagine who those people are that are going to live there. Right. So if you start to say, these are the people we want to be able to live here, the economics start to drive what you design.
No, and that's, we have to find a plan that's community acceptable, financially feasible, and can find someone to implement it. Those are often three different circles that have to converge as much as possible. So, well, having succeeded, gotten every, Barbara, you want to say anything, if you want to? I just want to hang that.
I really appreciate the opportunity to listen to everyone's thoughts tonight. And I think if I could summarize one feeling for me after listening, is grateful. Because again, I will stress what I hear tonight is concern, but it's concern because of the passion and love that we all have for the outcome of this project. And I'm heartened by where we are today. I think we are certainly on a track to bring forward the absolute best project that we can and the best outcomes that we can for not only the city, but all the surrounding communities, and not the people that we normally think of when we think of downtown, but for everyone. And I think those are all the things that will drive intrinsic and real value for the project.
Thank you. Is there, before we go to the next question, is there any committee member I missed or online? Okay, now that you're all warmed up, what keeps you up at night? What do you worry about? What do we, maybe, and we don't, well, these questions are all kind of interrelated and they have sort of the same answers, but just want to see if you have a different take on it. Anything we don't, so tell us what we don't know.
thing that I always worry about is, and everybody's talked about it, is Charleston has charm.
You bet.
And that's why we come. Here. When I first came to South Carolina, I lived on Hilton Head, and we used to come here all the time because of the charm and, you know, restaurants and stuff. But I worry that in this development, we will do things that will do two things. Number one, reduce the amount of charm that Charleston has, because once you lose it, you can't get it
Hard
back.
to get back, yeah.
And then secondly, we have to be cognizant of the effect of this development on everything else. And I'm not just talking about us in the building next door, but somebody mentioned King Street, and we had talked about that with Lowell also. You can't destroy other parts of the city because you're gonna draw everything in one area, and then these other areas are gonna suffer economically, so that. But the charm to me is the thing that has to be focused on.
Okay, great. Once. We have charm. What other things are we worried about? Losing or things we want to get? Things that keep you up at night, right?
I think one of the obvious things is we've got to now adapt for water. So the model of that we've had, entering public buildings, entering homes, is going to change. It's just the nature of it. So how you manage that, is it a matter of grade being, you know, where it currently is elevated to some degree, but the main entries to buildings is on the second floor, and there's a history of the city to do that. Those are great examples. On the other hand, what we see in the models is it's a hurricane on the ground levels, and you walk in a small door, there's a narrow lobby, and you get in an elevator, and you go upstairs.
See that a lot. See that a lot.
And that's not charming.
Yeah, I hear you.
And walking along those facades in which there's no engagement is not something that's really particularly pleasurable. So that's one of the
Okay,
challenges.
that's a design, design and engineering, because the water is right there, and the site's low and all the things you know. Okay. Well, you already went. We get a second chance.
With my concern that I wouldn't have a chance to speak earlier, I think I got some of my roadblocks in front of you.
Okay, yeah.
And since it's called a roadblock, I'll just say, I mean, today, there was so much traffic in Ansonboro. There's a basketball tournament going on in the middle of the day, at TV Arena with Rick Pitino.
Oh, wow.
Coaching,
Wow.
right 2 blocks from my house.
Big name.
And so just to pick up my kids, I sat at stoplights through a couple of rotations and even took a couple of detours that only I knew how to get to. So, but that's cool. I love where I live, and I love that it's vibrant. I think it's awesome that there's a basketball tournament going on right there. There are things going on all the time. The Gaillard Center is building a Spiegel tent. Whatever that is, they did it again, they did it last year too. I mean, we've got exciting stuff going on all over. When do you hit the point where it's not livable? And I think even if we talk to traffic engineers about it, and we did, we have to look at the area around Union Pier, not just in Union Pier. And somehow actually talk about when does it hit the point where it's not livable.
It tilts, yeah.
And then don't go beyond that. And I haven't heard anybody so far be able to say, I've got the answer to that with it. So those are the things we talk about a lot. And I will say a lot of the other things are really important: parks, affordable housing. And I mean, all of those components are also important to us too. I mean, I can't wait for some of the things that we don't even know are gonna be built there. And maybe
That's the fun part. There's a lot of stuff we don't know.
Yeah.
But we want to create a framework so that it can happen. Yeah.
So all of those things are important. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, thanks. I'm gonna, someone down here. Yeah.
Sure. I don't know if it's necessarily a roadblock, but I think it's the fact that we have to produce a master plan for a site that could have a 20-25 year build out right now. As you know, Mr. Huff very astutely pointed out, great cities are built organically and we have to plan within a year's time for something that, you know, that we can't foresee.
Goes back to that mosaic or tapestry or quilt metaphor versus a big thing, you know? I don't think you want the big thing. Scott,
Real quickly, I think a major roadblock is trust.
trust, yes. Okay.
And I'm not the trust that you guys probably think I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Trust in a plan that is going to have to be alive for decades,
Mhm.
which means it's also going to have to adapt. And that's a lot to trust in.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good observation. I mean, you know, governments change and leaders change and anyway.
It's not
Rick.
it's not a roadblock block, but it's something that could present a challenge, and it's the political challenge.
Mhm.
You know, West Ashley is the largest part of the city in terms of population. They have the largest block of city council members. Believe that why are we spending so much time on the peninsula and not? So those kinds of challenges, I think, are very real. And we'll have, you know, we'll have.
They're not at law, are they by district here or at
They're
law?
by district.
Okay, okay.
They're by district. And, you know, it's the largest population base of the city. It has the largest representation on the city council. And ultimately, whatever comes up will have to be approved by city council.
Yeah.
So that political challenge is not a roadblock, but it's.
Yeah. Jens, you were gonna say something before I cut you off, sorry.
Well, it's not a roadblock also, but we say, what are we worried about?
Yeah.
And, you know, when you're talking about a 20-year build out, one of the things that when Lowe was putting it together, his infrastructure was being put in pieces. And I could never fathom how that would work from a water containment perspective, particularly if you're elevating the property at all. So I worry about living next door to it is why isn't the infrastructure being required to be put in place first before you even put the first building up? And I recognize the economics of that. But that's the thing that keeps us up awake at night is how are you going to approach this?
Some people
regardless of the construction, traffic and all the rest of that, you know, for 20 years.
Right.
You bought a place right next to a big lot.
Right.
You had to know something was going to happen to it at some point. So, but you still think about that.
That's often referred to as phasing.
Yeah.
To use anybody else, or do we have, this is going pretty good. Measures of success, end of the day. How do we know we did okay? Faith, please.
I think one measure of success will be a water plan and a plan for Union Pier that are in sync.
Water plan, okay.
That we can make a plan for the water that seems reasonable and rational to everyone.
Okay.
So that whatever we put there will stay there.
Works, yeah. Okay, I like those precise answers. Others. Brian.
Well, just, I think we have to look forward to the time when the property is put for sale and who will be the eventual buyer. So you want a buyer, obviously, who's invested in this.
Or buyers.
Or buyer or multiple buyers. And so how do we can't create that necessarily, or maybe we are spreading the seeds a little bit to people who want to do the right thing for this community, but it's something that might be outside of the control of us all, and we need to create a plan that's exciting to somebody who wants to invest.
They can see themselves in it, and the community can see itself in it as well. Yeah. I think Barbara, you had your good to say something.
When even members of this committee say, wow, I didn't think of that.
Okay. That's a high bar. No, I'm really getting worried. Well, Jerry, sorry, I'm getting to know your name, so it's great.
Well, is whatever we do, whatever is done is gonna be there for a long time, so it'd be awesome if my kids and their kids and and your kids and grandkids and all of our families want to be here.
Right.
As time goes on, I think that, something that, that could be a goal.
So we could call that
aspiration.
intergenerational legacy. I mean, people like us often forget that these things take a long time. And next generation, the kids in elementary school, or I now have a grandkid, so I think a little differently about that. But you want this to be done for the next generation as much as for our own generation. It's going to take, as you all know, it's not going to happen overnight. But so, yeah, this intergenerational, we'd love to find a way to bring younger people, maybe high school kids, or I don't know how old, college kids right here, just major, to bring some of those folks into this process to get there. I'd love to hear what a high school student thinks about this, or even a College of Charleston.
A really good Wi-Fi.
Yeah. You gotta give them Wi-Fi and snacks, apparently.
Snacks.
It gets built.
Pardon me?
It gets built
Okay,
is a measure of success.
it gets
for me.
built, yeah, okay,
This used to be the business that I was in.
Yeah.
Land use attorney, as you know. I did a lot of work on a lot of plans that did not get built.
right.
They were failures.
You're preaching to us. We love, if our stuff doesn't get built, we didn't do a very good job.
Yeah.
Anyway,
That Sunday's planning commission gives its unanimous approval, and then it gets unanimous approval by city council.
yeah, yeah.
So that's
Okay, well, that's
the way I
yeah.
measure success.
Yeah.
How about Josh? I know I wanted to see if you wanted to jump in here.
Oh, no, I mean, I kind of agree with the group, this is something that I hope I end up seeing the end build out, so, something being built up, and, that's the measure of success, is if it gets built. It means it's feasible, it works, there's people living here, and it's a vibrant part of our city, so that's the benchmark.
There was a comment made at our planning commission meeting that we had the night where everybody made the comments. And it was a challenge to us that said that if we approved the plan that was put before us, that they were gonna put a plaque on Union Pier that had all of our names. on it. So I think the measure of success is to not have our names. And that everybody agrees that it's for everybody, it's affordable, it's sustainable, it's, we call it attainable housing, workforce housing, affordable for the residents of Charleston, not for people that live across the world, coming to stay 2 weeks out of the year, that is sustainable. And that we can manage successfully to do what our hopes are without a master developer, without a infrastructure put in place. And I think that's going to be challenging to put that whole big package in front of somebody and try to sell off pieces of the property.
Okay, that's great.
But I think, I don't know if this is a measure per se, but I think one of the things that everybody's going to have to come to terms with is going to be dense. There's no other way to do this. Unless some remarkable benefactor comes in and gives us a couple of $2 billion, it's going to have some more density. And we talk a lot about transportation in Charleston, and you think that Charleston being such a pedestrian city, which is one of the finest pedestrian cities in America, it ain't a good place to ride a bicycle.
I didn't want to say that, but I'm glad you did.
It's not a good place to ride a bicycle. And the other quality is that we need some sort of integrated transportation. But again, we can't do that until we live low density. So there's this conundrum that we have. And how to resolve that is something we're going to be looking at. I would also suggest you look at the Upper Peninsula zoning, which encourage density, which is exactly where it could be.
When you say Upper Peninsula, what is that?
It starts basically at DG Street and goes all the way up to Mount Pleasant. And it's fenced in by the elevated I-26 and the on-ramp.
So, okay, that's what you mean.
Yeah, it feels like it's isolated.
Yeah.
There were, auto repair shops there only 10 years ago. So it's that kind of a place. But the city constructed a new zoning there, but it was ill-conceived because it didn't encourage. It encouraged large buildings, 10 to 12-story buildings, but it didn't address the street experience. Which is where Charleston excels. And you start there, then you work your way up. You can have a 12, 14-story building. If you protect the scale and sensibility of the street.
But I think mobility option is a big deal here. And bike, I mean, I'm a little surprised. I just came back from Amsterdam last week and that's like bike capital. You gotta be careful. You get killed by the bikes, but it's unbelievable. And it all kind of works, you know, and so anyway, I think we can make a little dent in that universe too. I think my boss here is telling us to get into the final end here. But is there any final comments? Because I mean,
I just have one, and that is that I hope we can measure success by Union Pier having space for all of Charleston. Crossing, accessibility, some place for people to put their toes in the water. And some, sufficient green space that's reasonable, that is inviting for folks across our city.
Can we end on that? Thank you.
I just want to say thanks for the presentation.
Oh, well, thank you. We're here.
Great start.
We're here to work together and we know we have a broad client base, so thank you very much. We'll give you a round of applause.
Thank you, guys. So I hope all of you feel great tonight about the selection that we've made. From the perspective of the Riley Center, there's no need for an executive session. But at this time, I do want to see if anyone on the committee sees the need for an executive session. Okay, great.